Hey guys, Connor Richards of PokerNews here at NAPT Las Vegas, and this is Life Outside Poker. My guest for this episode is reality TV star Boston Rob, who you probably know from his appearances on Survivor, but who is also a big poker player. We talked about the similarities between reality TV strategy and poker, a time his 2006 poker game in Costa Rica got raided, and his appearance on a new game called Deal or No Deal Island. Let's get into it. All right, Rob, thanks so much for doing this interview. Super excited to talk to you here.
Thanks, Connor.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So, of course, you're very well known from your reality TV appearances. You're a bit of a reality TV legend, but of course, people in poker know that you're also quite a big poker player. You come to a lot of these live stops, been playing for a while, but let's go back. So, of course, your nickname is Boston Rob, so you grew up in Massachusetts, is that right?
I did. I was actually born right down the street from Fenway Park in Boston.
Oh, really?
And lived there for pretty much my entire life until I got married. A lot of people don't know this, but I actually moved to Florida after I was married. Got rid of the cold Boston winters and hanging out in the sunshine now.
So Boston, what is Boston like? I'll tell you what I know Boston from is it's the movie The Town, which is one of my favorite movies, but is that accurate?
It's a good one. I actually used the nun mask for Halloween this year, too.
Oh, that's
to scare
funny.
some kids at the house. But, I mean, Boston's it's a pretty, some people would say it's a tough town, but, like, it's an awesome place, right? Like, the people there are super passionate about their sports. They're loyal to one another. And, yeah, if you, treat them the wrong way, then they have no problem standing up for themselves. So.
You're in Florida now. What about like sports teams? Is it all still Boston for you?
Yeah. That's you can't be blowing in the wind with the stuff and switching teams. That's like a code. You don't do that, even as a man. I don't understand guys are like, oh, I like the Giants and the Yankees. Like, nah, bro. Like, stay true to where you're from.
And you also went to school in Boston. You studied psychology at Boston University. What got you interested in psychology?
I mean, the classes were pretty easy. I was interested in it. I was actually going to school for human physiology, and really, like, I took one psychology class, and I got really interested in it. I did well in it. I think that helped it, But I've always been interested in, like, the way other people think and how their minds work and stuff. Like, I kind of have an outside-of-the-box approach to the way, like, I play these reality shows and just life in general. And to me, it's interesting how other people potentially don't think the same way that I do. And it's funny because there's a lot of crossover between, like, reality TV and poker. Like, different people will see a same hand history and they'll think about it in a different way. And I've always been fascinated by that.
Was there a moment when it really clicked for you? Like, you're like, oh, I'm taking these psychology classes. Maybe they're easier than some other stuff. But then you're like, oh, I get this. Or I have, I'm talented in this area.
I don't know. It's kind of weird because I stayed in college 5 years. And then when I graduated, I think I made my parents really proud because I went to go work in construction. Because I really like to use my hands and build and stuff, And my dad would tease me. Like, he's like, you never really use that psychology degree. And all these years later, I'm like, yeah, Dad, I kind of did, just not in the traditional sense. But I don't think there was like an aha moment or anything like that. It's just, I feel like I was able to take some of those lessons and apply them, throughout the years and all the competition, strategy game shows and stuff.
And is it true that you had also made the Boston University hockey team but didn't end up playing?
I played for the inline hockey team, and I coached it after I graduated. I played hockey. I actually got a scholarship to go to college and play in college at the university, St. Michael's University in Vermont. And then I got a call that I got accepted to Boston University on academics, and at the time, they were the defending national champions. So I wasn't recruited to play ice hockey there. But in my mind at the time, I was like, oh, I'll walk on the team. And yeah, you don't walk on a national, champion team. So I walked on and then walked right off, after the tryout. But, yeah. I still play hockey. Still play hockey? Yeah. Yeah, I had a game last week, actually, which is kind of crazy. I'm like the oldest guy on the team by, I think, like 15, 20 years.
Yeah, super physical game, obviously. Survivor, I'm sure, has given you experience with that, but that's cool to see you're still playing hockey.
Yeah, I love it.
So when did poker enter your life? When did you realize that you had a talent for it, or when were you introduced to the game?
Actually, really young, really young. I was probably about 6 years old, and I can remember playing poker in my grandfather's basement. He had like a workshop, like it's kind of weird. My mother's father had like such a big influence on my life. He had like a workshop where I used to build stuff, and I loved working with my hands. And he had a poker table down there, and I remember the first game we played 5-card stud, would play for pennies and dimes and nickels, and whoever won, that was it. They got to keep it, and that was it. So I learned, and I loved the action part of the game. I really didn't understand the math part of it until later. After, Chris Moneymaker won the main event in like 03, 02, whatever it was, 03. Yeah, that's kind of like when I fell in love with everyone else. And it's weird, but I got invited to go to a charity event in Hawaii with Bodog, which was an online site at the time. And while I was there, I met Josh Arieh and David Williams, and we had an awesome time down there, Matt Savage. And those guys became friends of mine. And through the years, became friends with some of the other legends of poker, Daniel, and stayed in touch. And I've always had, like, a relationship with poker, Once I got married and started having kids, like, it kind of changed. I didn't play as much, and then I pick it up and then stop. But it's really evolved. My relationship with the game has evolved almost like the game itself has evolved over time.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Josh Arieh and David Williams, because I did see through looking at your Hendon Mob that you had a 50K score from in 2006. It was this wild card event in San Jose. I think it was like a televised celebrity event. Yeah. But Josh Arieh and David Williams were both there. Also Daniel Negreanu, Michael Mizrachi, and Cheryl Hines. So, I mean, that had to be quite an experience.
It was a good trip. There's a story behind the story, but we actually got raided by the Costa Rican Federales at that tournament.
Oh, wow.
Calvin had a big party at the house, and they came in like guns drawn. And we were fine, but we all had to stay at the party until they checked our passports and everything. And I think it was a little bit of a shakedown, but we had a good weekend. We got out of there. But that's a true story, and it's kind of wild. But that's like that excitement, I think, intrigued me to the game even more. And it was a pretty memorable cast of characters you just mentioned there. A lot of whom I'm still friends with today. Yeah.
That's crazy. I did see that when I Googled this wild card that there was a raid. I wasn't sure what the timeline was, but so you were there when that happened. And
I was there. Yeah. We were at his compound. So the tournament took place at a different place, and then listen, like you're too young to remember, but in the early days of online poker here, like in the early 2000s, it was wild. There was a lot of money and fun times.
Yeah, I am a little too young for that, but actually how I got introduced to poker was from my dad, and so I remember all those years it being on TV and him playing online poker and all those things. So sure has changed since then, yeah.
It has, but you know what? Like everything evolves, so it's fun to see the progression of where it was. I can remember during those days listening to like Doyle and Slim and those guys tell the story about the old days and the road gamblers and stuff. And I was so super intrigued by like what they had to go through to come up to like get to where they were, and just being here in Las Vegas, this town has like, such a history. And there's something about like poker that's super intriguing. It's like the combination of skill and luck. It's not like, the carnival games downstairs that they have in the casino that are just, negative expectation luck games. It's the type of game where, like, if you're really good enough, you can manipulate it to your favor in the long term. And I think finding that balance between skill and luck in this game is like another thing that's like always really, driven me to it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the combination of both skill and luck and how that kind of separates it and why people are so interested in poker. Who are some of the other celebrities who you've gotten to play with over the years?
I mean, there's been a lot. In the early days, Willie Garson. More recently at the Poker Go studio, I played with Daryl Morey, who was the GM for the 76ers. I'm trying to remember. To me, the celebrities were not the celebrities. To me, the celebrities were the players. It was actually a period of time where, a long time ago, I did a television show out here in Vegas, and my wife Amber and I, we moved out here. We filmed it with Daniel, and, we're running around with, back in the day, it was Carlos Mortensen, Eric Lindgren, Daniel, Scotty Wynn, Todd Brunson, and, those guys were the celebrities to me, and it's crazy just to see a lot of them are not even playing anymore, have had their own roller coasters of ups and downs. But at the time, those were the celebrities, were the players. Because we watch them on TV, it was ESPN, and then there was Poker After Dark and Celebrity Poker Showdown. Those were the three shows, and that was it. And now the kids have so much content they can watch online. Everybody has a training site. Everybody has, different types of media they can learn from. So I think the game is being brought to more people, and people are better at it. But there's still fish. So,
so you mentioned some really big poker boom names there. Where did you get to play with these people? Were these private cash games or, kind of televised things?
Yeah, the televised events and the tour. I traveled a little bit. Back then, it wasn't like it is now. There was no, 50Ks or 100Ks. The biggest tournaments were 10Ks. I think there was one 25K a year that was at Bellagio. So the tournaments were more accessible, and really even those guys were playing 1600 circuit events, they come to town. But Daniel and Josh have always been friends, and living out here and playing golf with them and having a relationship with them. Then I think, just being around it, we played everywhere. It wasn't so much home games, but mostly in casinos and stuff, tournaments.
So you mentioned playing on these kind of tournament stops and festivals. One place where we see you a lot is the RunGood Poker Series events that they do. That's where I first met you back, I think it was in San Diego, but Tana and Haley are obviously great, and they do a lot of fun things for players and ambassadors alike, but how'd you get introduced to those guys, and how do you like working with them?
Yeah, they're awesome. So after I left Vegas and kind of moved to Florida, the closest place for me to play poker where I live in Florida was Biloxi, Mississippi, and I used to go to the Beau Rivage, and the IP would have stops 3 or 4 times a year. And while I was there, I became pretty good friends with Chris Conrad and Dan Lowry. And over the years, we kept in touch. And like I said, when my kids were born when they were little, I kind of took a break from poker and didn't play for a number of years. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I got a call or a message from Chris Conrad and Daniel, and they're like, there's this guy, he's running this, medium stakes poker tour. We think you guys would hit it off. You should come out for a stop. So I was like, okay. I was like, let me know, and we ended up going. The first stop I remember going to was in downstream I don't know, is it Oklahoma? Downstream Casino.
Downstream, is that where I went? Is that in, what is it, Joplin?
Joplin, Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Missouri, yeah.
And, man, I got to tell you, it brought back so much nostalgia from the old days because it was so fun and so social. There was a period of time from, like, when I left Vegas and after the Biloxi tournament to, like, when I started playing again, that poker wasn't so fun. Like everybody had the hoodie and the glasses and nobody talked, and it wasn't so much a social thing. It was all about equity and value and math and numbers, and it was like not fun. And for someone like me that plays, 6, 8, maybe 10 times a year, when I invest that time to play, I want it to be a good time. So Chris was like, come on out, it's an awesome time, and it was. And, similarly, before I met Tana, I was going to Reno a little bit and hanging out with Jason Somerville, and he had that for a while with the Run It Up series. And then that kind of just disappeared. I don't know what happened with it or whatever, but it was gone. So then, like, this kind of filled that void for me. And then started traveling with these guys a little bit here and there. And, it's all been an evolution. And Tana's a great guy. He's a good businessman. He's smart. He juggles a lot of different things. I often tell him, there's two kinds of people that talk about doing things and people that do things. And the only way to judge someone is to see not what they say, but what they do. And during the pandemic, he asked me, what other projects I was working on and stuff. And I was like, man, things are kind of slow. Like, we had I do a lot of public appearances and stuff, and things kind of got to a point where we had to pivot and figure out something else. And I was like, he's like, what are you passionate about? What else do you like to do? And I was like, man, I love to cook. And he's like, do you ever think about doing a cookbook? And I was like, I thought about it, but I never really did it. And he was like, let's do it. And I was like, okay, but how? And he's like, come up with the recipes. He got a photographer. Haley came down and shot all the pictures. We rented a condo and a kitchen and got a bunch of groceries and made this stuff and put it together. And like that, the Boston Rob Family Favorites cookbook was born. And we got a printer and we self-produced it. And, after that, it's like, man, this kid, he's a doer. So we started, his background was a sweatshirt, and, so he ended up helping me with my merch. And then obviously he has lots of inroads with poker. So he introduced me to Carrie Katz over at Poker Go. And I told him what my objectives were. I like to play 6, 8 tournaments a year. Let's figure out some kind of collaboration. And, that relationship was awesome too. So Tana's been great. RunGood guys have been great in a lot of different areas. More recently, professionally, the first, 9 months of this year, I've been super busy doing TV stuff. So again, I've kind of pulled back from the poker a little bit. But I'm going to focus strong on it between now and the end of the year. And that's just what I feel comfortable with is not having the pressure to play all the time so that when I do play, I really enjoy it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it makes sense that the first 10 months or so of the year were preoccupied because you were doing this Deal or No Deal Island, which we will talk about. But let's go back even further. And how did you get into reality TV?
I mean, I'm a doer. I'm not a talker. I talked about, sending an application to be on the show, and I sent one in. And I got a call and went on the interviews, and it was 2001. It was before 9/11, which is kind of crazy. And it's kind of, just evolved and happened. It's weird. It's like you're given the football in the game, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to run with it. So I don't know. I kind of feel like I've really made the most of my opportunities But it started out as simple as like anybody that tells me today, like I'd love to try something like that. It's like, have you sent in an application? Have you tried? Because literally that's the first step. You got to take the first step on your own. And who would have known, 25 years later, what it turned into. So.
What was that application? Was that for Survivor or was that a different show? Yeah,
it was for Survivor. Yeah. I had an ex-girlfriend at the time, and she really liked the show, and we started watching it. At the time, there was a kid on the show. His name was Colby, and he was like really good at the challenges, this and that. And ironically, my wife was on that season with him. I didn't know. She wasn't my wife at the time, but I remember sitting there watching it with my dad and being like, oh, I would kick his ass. And they were like, my dad was like, yeah, you think so? Why don't you send in an application and try? And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I sent it in, and lo and behold, we actually played together a few seasons later. We're friendly with the guy now. He's a pretty good guy, but we had a few showdowns.
And it seemed like you pretty kind of instantly were successful on the show. You were the runner-up of a season of Survivor, I think in 2003, and then you came back for a redemption season and won the whole thing. What was the first time on Survivor like for you?
So, yeah, actually, your notes are a little bit off. Initially, I wasn't so great. The first season I played, I actually finished, like, 7th. Like, I was out right before, like, I made the merge, but not the jury, so, like, only about halfway. But I think I made enough of an impression on the producers that I was asked to come back for the All-Star season. I understood the strategy of the game better than even some of the people that made the game, I think. Because at the time, they were like, oh, we have to keep the strong guys in order to do good, and it was about more physical and challenge. And in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, it's kind of about that, but the real strategy is just to outlast everyone else and then get them to give you the money. So my thinking was, if there's another really big strong guy here, what do I need him for? Let's get rid of him so I can be that guy, And at first it wasn't well received, but, as time went on, people saw, the genius behind it, really, right? So when I was asked back for the All-Stars, that was the season that I went to the end with my wife. And, a lot of people would call it the greatest hedge in history because there's only 2 rules on Survivor. You can't physically assault someone, and you can't conspire to share the money. So no chop, right? So we got down to the end, the final 2, and then the people have to vote for who's the winner. So before they decided who the winner was going to be, they'd already cast their votes. I asked the girl to marry me. That's a true story. And this April we'll have been married 20 years. So worked out pretty good.
It did work out. That's pretty crazy.
And then, like you did say, like 10 years later, I did finally win the show, so I didn't have to hear anymore. But I was the winner. So I got that off my back, too. So, yeah.
So break down some of the strategy for Survivor. You talked about the physical element, but then it seems crazy because, you have to kind of make alliances, but then break alliances.
Yeah.
And you have to be self-interested, but also, I don't know, how there's lots of prisoner's dilemma type things going on.
I think the number one skill set you have is your self-awareness, right? You really have to understand how you're being perceived. And then you also have to be able to put yourself in the other person's position and see the game through their eyes so that you can make moves that they would potentially, be in their self-interest if you want them on your side. The game's evolved. The game from 2001 to the game in 2024 is completely different. There are so many parallels between the game of poker and Survivor and even life and business in general. And I think just like in a tournament, you can't win the tournament in the first couple levels. Like in Survivor, you can't go too hard too quick. Ironically, lots of poker players have played Survivor, and invariably they make simple, ridiculous mistakes like that, trying to win the game in the first 3 days. You have to let it come to you a little bit. And there's that, how we started talking, that balance of skill and luck There's some things you can control and some things you can't. The things you can't control, you can't do anything about, and you got to be okay and let it go. Like if you lose a tournament, you get it in good and you lose, or, like the equity is in your favor, 80-20, like 20% of the time you're going to lose. Like you can't go on tilt and lose your everything. Like that's it. You just keep going and move forward. So there's lots of parallels between the two. And I think just in general, balance is like the key to doing well. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have seen other poker players go on Survivor and other reality shows. Sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't. People like JRB, Garrett Adelstein. Have any of them ever come to you and ask for your advice or preparation when they're going to be on a show?
No, that would have been smart if they did, though, huh?
They might have done a little better, yeah.
JRB did okay. Garrett didn't do terrible either. I mean, it's hard. The game is hard. Like to win Survivor, it's just like winning a poker tournament. You have to play well. You have to be aware. You have to do well, and you have to get lucky. It's funny. Like Deal or No Deal Island, like the newer format that I just played, was interesting because I got to play it for the first time. So nobody went before me, so I could kind of craft what I thought was GTO, like the optimal strategy. And very quickly I realized there's a lot that you couldn't control in that game, way more variance. So to me, it's a lot easier when there's more variance because you don't worry so much. It's like playing PLO versus playing stud, right? Like stud, you got to count the cards, you got to know, you got to make the correct decision. PLO, sometimes you're 60-40, let's go, let's see if we get lucky. And I think the more variance, the less you should be emotionally invested and just, have fun.
So how did Deal or No Deal Island come together? And there was another poker player on that show, Branson Poker. So that was kind of cool to see poker really getting some mainstream attention there.
Yeah, poor Branson. I targeted him from the outset. I talked to him after. I didn't know, I knew he was a poker player when he was out there, but I didn't know of him before. So they reached out to me, they said, there's this new format. Are you interested? Send the application, do the whole thing. And I get out there and, day one, here's the thing. Any reality show, if you're smart, right? On day one or day two or day three, whenever that first, challenge, those are so critical. Pay attention. Somebody's going to make a mistake. And when they do, make sure you point it out to everyone, right? You have to target them because if not, it's you. So the scene with Branson was, there was a lady that was having a really hard time pulling a suitcase. We're running through the mud and she had to get it through. So me and another guy jumped in and helped her, and then all of a sudden, they're pushing this agenda to go get a red suitcase, and there's potentially money or a steal in it, right? And they said, anybody want to get it? And smartly, everybody says, no, I'm not going to get it. Why would I get it? Puts a target on me, right? And the lady really needed it, but physically she wasn't able to go get it. So Branson decides that he's going to take it amongst himself to be the hero in this spot, go out there, bring the suitcase close so the old lady can jump in, grab it, and put it, And I was like, man, that's a really nice gesture, but here's a really good opportunity. And I look at everybody else and I just say, what is this guy doing? Are you kidding me? Are you friggin' kidding me? Yeah, it looks so nice, he's going to help her. But by him helping her, it's taking a spot away from one of us. That was it. As soon as they saw the logic in it, they were like, yeah, screw this guy. He's going to kill one of our game. Meanwhile, I know it's probably me, the one he's going to kill, but I made him feel like it was going to be one of them, and he was being selfish. And at that point, he couldn't do anything because everybody was like, yeah, that was a really bad play, dude. Why did you do that? Except for the lady, who was happy. And after it was really hard because, after the show was over, he's like, why? What happened? Why? I was like, dude, it was not personal at all. It was there was an opportunity. I had to take it, but he's a nice kid, and he makes some fun content, and I'm dying to play poker with him. Our paths haven't crossed since the show, but, that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Hopefully they pass. So
Yeah.
how did you end up on Deal or No Deal Island?
I sent the application. Like I said, they called and, they said, we have a new format. You want to try it? And sent the application, went through the whole thing and the casting, and, yeah, that's how it happened.
And you mentioned you're jumping back into poker now, but anything else on the horizon, reality TV-wise?
I just went this summer and shot a new show in Scotland, up in the Highlands. It's called The Traitors.
Oh.
And it's,
okay.
it's a pretty famous show. It just won the Emmy, actually. It's on Peacock. And so it's again, a social, psychological show where it's like murder mystery type of thing in a castle in Scotland. And it has elements of strategy, physical, social. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be coming out January the 9th. They just announced on Peacock.
So yeah, pretty soon then.
Yeah.
Will people be able to access that here in the U.S., yeah?
Yeah, I think you just need a subscription to Peacock. I think it's $6 a month or something.
Well, definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So we talked about, the parallels between games like Survivor and poker, and some of the poker players who have been on. Who are some poker players who you think would really excel on Survivor?
I think Daniel will be good. For a long time he talked about doing it. He really did. The thing that works against him is he's known. But maybe they put together a celebrity season with other celebrity people. He's a good read, He's super studious. He understands the nuances of the game. I'd like to see him do good. There's another, discrepancy between the two, games. Survivor is very physical and strategic and social, right? But as time's gone on, it's become less physical, less about, how well you do in challenges, and it's skewed more towards the social aspect. Someone else that played the game a bunch of times really good, Sandra. Sandra's won twice. She's the most unphysical person you've ever met, but she relied on that social part. Where you see the evolution of poker is a little bit different. It's less about the social and more about the cerebral and the strategic. So two games that have similar. I mean, poker is not so much physical either, but two games that have similar, elements to them have skewed differently over time. And I think that's where it divides, but it's still that balance of skill and luck that I think separates, players that ultimately end up doing good and not so good. Yeah.
And you met your wife on there. I wanted to ask how you balance, being a reality TV star and raising a family. Yeah. You're always posting on social media about your daughters and things like that, but it probably helps to have a wife who also came from a reality TV background.
No doubt about it. She understands it. She knows, she also understands me after 20 years. She knows how, I love to compete and, still be active, and allows me to travel and quench that thirst for sure. Yeah.
And so we are here, you mentioned traveling, we're here in Las Vegas at the NAPT Poker Stars Festival, and it's been going for a couple days now. It's, starting to pick up. I think the main event started today as we're filming this, but what are you doing here at this stop? Are you going to be playing a lot?
I'm excited. I'm going to play the main event tomorrow. I'm going to hang out a few days. I got a lot of poker coming up. I'm going to go play the RunGood event in San Diego towards the end of the month. And then in December, I'm going to head to the Bahamas and play the WSOP event. So, a lot of poker between now and the end of the year. And, enjoying time with family over the holidays. And, just loving it. Yeah, it's all good.
Nice. I will be in the Bahamas too, so I will see you there.
Awesome.
All right, so I just have some more general questions that I like to ask people as we wrap up here. what is something that you would recommend people, like a book or a TV show? Don't just say Survivor, but book or TV show, movie. What's
You want me to recommend something?
Yeah.
There's a great steakhouse downstairs called Carver. We got the tomahawk the other night. Me and Gary Gates split it, and it was really good.
The Carver? Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's here at Resorts World. I've never been there, but anyone in Las Vegas should definitely check that out, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. And
You want me to recommend a book too, or what else? I haven't read a book in
well, so
30
so
years.
that's the thing. The original question is, what's a book you'd recommend? Not everybody has a book off the top of their head, so I don't know. Just something.
There is
that's
actually a really
inspired
good
you,
book,
you know?
a good book that I will recommend, and you shouldn't be too proud. It's called Personal Finance for Dummies. It's one of the dummies books, the yellow and black book. But there's so much good financial advice in that book. As far as, I tell my kids all the time, it's not about what you do to make your money, but what you do with it once you make it and how to use it to make more. Really sound, good financial advice in that book. So I recommend that for everyone.
Great advice. No shame in those For Dummies books. Tons of great information for sure.
Yeah.
What is a piece of advice that you'd give to your younger self?
Man, just do it. Like, it's going to work out, Like, I never really, I still don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up, which is kind of wild. Like, I still feel like I can't believe, I'm 48 years old now, and I think just, try different things and do it, and it's going to be okay. It's going to work out. You just, as long as you can figure out how to adapt to your situation, the people that adapt ultimately end up doing the best. And good for Survivor, good for business, good for poker, good for life. Yeah.
That's great advice. All right, so the last question here. We've talked a lot about, parallels between poker and other strategy games, but what is your favorite life lesson that you think can be drawn from poker?
Just don't quit.
Don't quit.
Yeah. It's hard. Life is hard. You're going to have ups and downs. You ride the roller coaster, right? That's what life is. And Survivor, the chips are down, something happens, something changes, things are going good again. You have to keep trying. That's the biggest thing. I tell my kids all the time, you're going to fall down, get up. Let's go. You got to keep trying. And poker's not easy, and when you get kicked down, you got to get up. Sometimes you need to take a break. Don't go down to the pits and, think you're going to win it back playing dice or roulette or ultimate Texas Hold'em or, God forbid, slot machine. Shout out Tana Karn. Let's end there.
Tana does love his slot machines. Well, thanks so much for talking to me. I really enjoyed this, and hey, good luck in the main event.
All right. Thanks, Connor.